if so. About 5 to 6 minutes.
That's no problem, no problem at all. Just tell me to shut up if I'm going on too much. So that's the main thing. But thanks very much for the invitation to attend this evening's meeting. And we know it is a very important time, and I want to first and foremost express my my fraternal greetings and solidarity to all trade unions in struggle on behalf of the RMT, and to thank you sincerely for the support that's been not just the NEU but across the piece of the trade union movement has been fantastic in our particular campaign. And what I'd say in summary at the moment is what a mess this country is currently in at this point in time. You know, we face ultimately as trade unionists the battle of our lives. And it's a simple question: do we want a fairer society, or do we want a gig economy? The likes of Mike Ashley or Jeff Bezos want, you know, and unfortunately the Tory administration quite clearly want this, and ultimately we can't have that. How can we have a situation where public sector workers and workers across the economy have to go to food banks and go to fuel banks, whatever they are, to survive in 2022? How is that an acceptable state of affairs? And how can working class people be blamed for the ills of capitalism? It's absolutely and utterly abhorrent and disgraceful, and that's where we are. Just to brief you on the RMT dispute, obviously we currently the dispute is just over 6 months old now. We've currently gone through a successful reballot of our members. The strength and the determination of our members is unwavering. They've been fantastic throughout, and they recently delivered a 70% turnout and over 90% in favour of industrial action in the two main strands of the negotiations, that is Network Rail and the train operating companies. And you'll be aware today, just this afternoon actually, the referendum closed of our Network Rail ballot. And that was rejected by, I think it was a 60%. Sorry, it was an 80% turnout, and 2/3 of those balloted of Network Rail members rejected the deal. Let's be clear: the deal was below inflation for starters. It advocated in both train operating companies and Network Rail thousands of job losses, the closure of ticket offices up and down the country, the reduction in maintenance schedules, the introduction of driver-only operation, and basically an unsafe, unstaffed railway, which will prohibit the most vulnerable members in society from using them. So those are the stakes of where we are. We were expected to sign away a decade's worth of collective agreements that we've negotiated on behalf of our members for the sake of a below inflation pay rise. These are for workers, much like yourselves, that worked throughout the COVID pandemic, that work to deliver a better society, that put their lives and their families' lives on the line, and this is the manner in which they're being treated. I wish, in a way, I could say this was just replicated, just an issue for the rail industry, but as we all know, it's not. Working class people are being demonized for just demanding a fairer share of the wealth that's out there. And let's be clear, brothers and sisters, the wealth is out there. There's more money than has ever been available in this society. There are more billionaires than we've ever had. You've got absolute rampant profiteering. But that's not an issue when it comes to inflation. The fact that working people want a pay rise to be able to feed their families, that's going to fuel inflation. Well, that's a nonsense. And we need to be absolutely clear and defeat them in these arguments. The reason that we have inflation is because we've had an economy that's been precarious, and it's been ripped apart by privateers for the last 40 years. And now when global factors come into play, there's nothing there to support the infrastructure. It all goes crumbling. They're not worried about profits, but they're worried about working class people being able to feed their families, and that's the society we live in. And it's quite dreadful. But that's where we are, and that's what we've got to do and fight. In our own industry, we've also had the problems of who we actually negotiate with. We've been told that the employers are the only people we can negotiate with. The government's got nothing to do with it, and now it's quite clear that the government are behind it. Only in the 11th hour, about 10 days ago, the government intervened at the 11th and reinserted driver-only operation into the proposals, a red line that the RMT could not accept. It's quite clear the government are pulling the strings, and I'm just watching the news today. You can see exactly the same thing playing out with the RCN. They're quite clear that they do not wish to negotiate. They wish to smash the unions, and what we've got to do is stand collectively and support one another to fight for a better society for all. Because the reality is, if the RMT wins, I believe all working people could win. And I know, if anything, I genuinely hope, and it's not just about us or anything like that, I genuinely hope that what we've done is inspire people and give them the confidence to fight for a better future and a better way forward for our families. Because that's what we're in danger of at the moment. We're in danger of not handing over a better set of terms and conditions or standards of living, whatever you want to call it, to the next generation. That's the real danger that we face at this point in time. But I take a lot of pride that particularly the efforts of Mick Lynch and Eddie Dempsey. What they've done is the arguments they've done, the way they've shot down the media, the way they've taken on the ruling class, that they've given, if they've inspired people and we can fight for a better deal, that'd be fantastic. It's not just obviously the RMT, it's across the piece. All trade unions are rising and fighting together now. So what we've got to do, brothers and sisters, we've got to fight for, not just for within our own respective trade unions. We will get good deals. We will fight for the best deal that's possible for our members, but we've got to think a bit longer than that. We've got to keep working together. We've got to keep fighting together, and what we've got to do is fight for not just a particular dispute to be resolved. We've got to fight for better terms and conditions across the piece. We've got to fight for housing. We've got to fight for better transport systems and nationalisation of all state industries, and we've got to fight for better employment rights for all going forward, not just those collectively organised. We've got to fight for the private sector, for all those people suffering in the gig economy. We've got to give people a better foundation for the future, and that's what we've got to do. And what we've learned from anything is we've the support we've received, I believe, is important. We repay that support and that faith that's been given, shown to us. And I give that commitment. We'll be on every single picket line. We've been proud if I support the CWU workers. We'll be there with the FPU. We'll be there on Thursday with the RCM workers. When you guys hopefully return your successful ballot mandate, we'll be there supporting you. And what we want to do is learn from this experience and fight for a better future for all. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks very much for the invitation to attend, and it's solidarity to all, and I'm very proud to attend once again. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I fully agree. I think we have all been inspired by RMT members and how long the dispute has been going on and how resolved members still are. And we very much hope for a good resolution for members.
Thank you very much.
I see that we have been joined by Shav now. So I'm just going to say that we're very lucky to have Shav as our General Secretary of the TUC Wales. She's a champion of the working class, and wherever there's a picket line, Shav will be there in solidarity if she can. Thank you, Shav. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. Really good to be joining everyone. And of course, now more than ever, the case has already been made by our previous speaker about why it is so important right now for us to be all standing united as workers in Wales and across the whole of the country to stand up against this government, particularly the government at a UK level, given all of the attacks on the union movement that are coming down the line. But of course, why is it that people are actually taking strike action? Well, they're taking strike action because of the cost of living crisis, and we know with the situation at this moment in time, we fully recognise that for loads of workers in Wales, this cost of living crisis, it isn't new. It's been the reality for so many years now, because we do live in a country where the average worker hasn't had a pay rise, real terms pay rise, for 15 years at least. And today's data that's come out from the TUC, so there's some new wage growth data that we've published today, and that demonstrates that wage growth in 2022 will have been the worst for half a century, and that this is the sharpest fall in real wages since 1977 and the second worst on record since 1945. And we also know the key workers in the public sector have, of course, seen their pay plummet by at least £180 a month in real terms, and the average pay is still worth £85 a month less than it was back in 2008. So, when you look at that when you hear that kind of information, or when you're talking to people on the picket lines, and when you're talking to people in the workplaces or on the street, you know what that actually means. You know that means that more people are now, there was a time when, of course, public sector workers, particularly people who work in schools, were telling us, we were always really worried about how we were going to look after the kids that were coming in, and they were hungry. We were bringing food ourselves in order to make sure that the children had something to eat. We were having extra clothes being made available so that, those kids that needed to have a fresh change of clothes teachers, teaching assistants, that's what they were doing. They were looking after those kids. But the situation now is so bleak, where we're hearing, even from, I mean, we've got a situation where the School Leaders Union is balloting its members for industrial action. Who would have thought, that such a time would come where they're telling us that actually in Wales alone, the National Association of Head Teachers have said that they believe that they are now in a situation where they are going to have to really seriously consider making staffing cuts, reduce the number of hours that teachers are going to be able to work because they can't afford to keep paying them. I mean, that really gives you a bit of an understanding as to the reality. So we hear lots of like messaging and lots of people say different things, but when it's broken down to that kind of level, it's not that we don't want teachers, it's not that we don't need them, it's not that children don't deserve an education, because they do deserve an education. And of course, if you remember, during the period of lockdown, there was the teachers straight away, all of a sudden, overnight, they were not only teaching the key workers' children in schools, whilst they were feeling unprotected quite often, whilst they were unsure about whether or not they had the right level of PPE, whilst they were really worried about ventilation in the classrooms, they were still also then teaching online and immediately switched to this new way of working. So it's not like there's been a break for teachers. It's not like the world was all of a sudden there was like a quiet time. There was none of that. So you work through all of that period. And now, given the data, the information that I've just shared with you, how can it be justified? There is no justification for saying that people don't deserve a cost of living pay increase when they've had their pay held back for such a long time. And as we say, we haven't seen these types of the data tells us, so we're looking back to 1945. I mean, it's actually unbelievable. It is actually unbelievable that in a country as rich as we are, where our leadership in Westminster was partying away, where they were doing as they pleased, and everyone else was told to follow the rules and to do everything that they could to keep infections as low as they should be, that they did whatever the heck that they wanted. And now they think that actually that the fundamental British rights that we've always had, to take industrial action, that it's as if you would think that we would already have the best legislation. We don't. We have one of the worst pieces of legislation when it comes to anti-union legislation already. And now, instead of actually understanding that it takes a lot, I mean, it takes a whole lot for people to actually take that decision that we are now going to take industrial action. We are going to be going out on strike, knowing fully well that there was a lot of people that were clapping them every single Thursday, right? And they were being told that they were heroes and thank you for everything that you did. And now what are they doing? They've demonized already. We've seen the demonization of the RMT and other railway workers for taking the stand that they are to protect their jobs and to protect the futures of other workers that are coming into the industry as well. They are now going to turn. This is going to switch around, and we have to understand, but when they come for one worker, they come for everybody. And so it's so important that the union movement sticks together and understands that it's not just the RMT or the CW that's going to be attacked, it's going to be everybody. Eventually, they will come around and they will say, oh, well, we've had 2 years where so many children didn't have that face-to-face teaching, and now you're removing that right away from them. How could you be taking strike action? So we have to make sure that people understand the stories, the real lived experiences of far too many workers in Wales, including those that work in the education system. I mean, these buildings would be absolutely nothing if it wasn't for the people within them. The education that is delivered, the care and the attention that is given to students only happens, and to children only happens because of the people who are committed. And they're committed to those jobs. I mean, they weren't looking to be millionaires. This is not about someone, trying to have an extra bit of cash lying around so they can, have 5-star holidays and have a yacht and the rest of the other stuff. No, this is about having a basic standard of living. So we can't carry on like this. And of course, we can't afford for key workers to have yet another brutal year of real terms, pay cuts. And we can't actually fix the staffing crisis that we're seeing in the public sector either. If we are not going to be paying workers properly, then we should not be surprised when they are leaving the industry, where they are leaving the industry in the sectors that they've committed to, they've had, attempted to have careers in, when actually the situation is that they can't make the basic ends meet anymore. We already know that the majority of workers, we knew at the last some months ago now, the Wales CUC did some polling, and we know that 28% of workers were already, who worked in the public sector, were already at a second job. Those in a second job were telling us that they were looking for a third job. Those who yet didn't have that second job were in the process of looking for that second job. And then it's like a vicious cycle, right? Because quite often people were looking for work within locality, within a place where they could walk to. So they're thinking, my local supermarket, the local high street, the local pub. Where is it that I can go where I can have an extra evening job so many hours a week in order to try and make that ends meet? But of course, so many of those businesses are now shutting down because they can't afford to keep their doors open. They're not getting the customers through the doors because quite often it was public sector workers who were their local customers. So if people haven't got money in their pockets, they're not going to be keeping that local economy going either. And we know as well that as far as some of the supporting evidence is concerned, 1 in 3 public sector workers are, as I say, already in the process of either trying to see if they can get other jobs or quitting their jobs as well. We know the nurses are earning at least £5,000 less in real terms pay compared to 2010. But we also know that if the government was to impose a 2% settlement for 2023-2024, hospital porters' real pay is going to be down by £1,000. We know the maternity care assistants' real term pay will be down by at least 1,200, and the nurses' real terms pay will be down by at least £1,500, 1,500 as well. And of course, we know that the midwives are also, going to be hit as well. And of course, the paramedics are going to be taking strike action, and the nurses are going to be taking strike action as well. But the fact of the matter is that we've had over a decade of austerity to begin with. Then we had COVID. Then we've had the mess post-Brexit as well, and the fallout from Brexit. So we can't pretend that hasn't affected us either. And in the meantime, what have they done? All they have done is continue to back the bonuses of bankers, made sure that they were going to be perfectly comfortable. The CUC has done some research that tells us that if we equalize capital gains tax and income tax, actually pretty much every single public sector worker would be able to have an inflation-proof pay rise. I mean, that really gives you an indication of how much wealth there is in this country and how many people actually, that small number of people, how they can literally get away from riding off the backs of public sector workers. And this economy that we always talk about, this economy wouldn't run if it wasn't for the people who work within it. So the CUC has been calling for a number of different things, including making sure that we have a different kind of economy going forward as well. We need action on housing, as already been mentioned, because we need to be very realistic about this completely dysfunctional housing market, which ultimately is locking tens of thousands, particularly young people, out of owning their home ever, right? People, there's no chance. And of course, the majority of people will come from a working class background. We also need to make sure that there's no more half measures and no more of this like token gesturing. We need to be bringing energy and other infrastructure back into public ownership. We need to have a national minimum wage of at least £15 an hour. And of course, the increases that are going to be coming down the line in terms of universal credit, we shouldn't have to wait for April for that to happen. So, and it's also, of course, really, it is extremely important that we keep being very clear in our arguments that it is time for those companies, particularly in the private sector, who were bailed out during COVID, to acknowledge that, they always talk about this corporate social responsibility. Well, how about putting your workers before your profits margins for once? And I think that it's really important that whilst we do all the political side of things as well, we can't solely rely on politicians alone to solve things for us. And this is that final
Thanks,
point.
Shav. Can we just wind up, please?
Yeah, just that my final point is we've got to organize every single workplace. We've got to organize across all of our communities, and we've got to keep building that momentum and that solidarity of making sure that we are supporting each other as best as we can, because this fight is not going to be one that's going to be that's going to be won overnight. But I know that if we stick together, we've got half a chance of winning, and winning really well.
Thank you so much, Shav. Those statistics, just, if anything, it makes us see that we are right in taking our fight to the government. And there is no justification for giving any worker a below inflation pay rise. I could definitely agree with that. Our next speaker is going to be Renata Medeiros Mira. Renata is a lecturer in medical statistics in the Cardiff School of Dentistry, and she's also a prominent activist within the UCU, which is University and College Union. As we will all know, the UCU have a fantastic campaign at the moment called UCU Rising, and members have recently had several days of very successful action. Welcome, Renata. Can we keep it to 5 minutes, please? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Good evening. Yeah, many thanks for inviting me here to bring solidarity from Cardiff UCU to our NEU colleagues. And congratulations on beating the absurd and unfair 50% ballot threshold. I think every ballot that gets, every threshold that is beaten is a massive victory in itself. So UCU represents staff from colleges and universities, as you might know, and we are in dispute with our employers over our pensions, pay, and other issues as well, like pay equality, casualization, and workload. So as you just said, we just had 3 days of strike action in November, and we have more to come in the new year. So I feel like our struggles are very much linked, and I'm delighted to be here and to be part of this growing movement of workers across the country who are taking action, demanding better pay, better conditions. And I truly hope that us and NEU and others don't stop here, because expecting pay in line with inflation, as it was already said, it's the bare minimum. I said this at one of our UCU rallies, and I'll say it here because I think it's so important to emphasize that, if we think about the famous slogan, breads and roses, and we should be fighting for bread, but also roses, fighting for decent pay, it's at the crumbs level. We're not even smelling the roses. So I hope unions keep on demanding to be better valued, because it's, us university staff, you teachers, nurses, postal workers, bus, train, ambulance drivers, and all of those whose work keeps society moving. We are the society. And this is second mention to Jeff Bezos, but yeah, it's not the Jeff Bezos, it's not the many CEOs or top managers that are essential. It's all of us together. And it's just beyond belief how little valued and compensated most workers are for their skills and their dedication. And I think this is particularly shocking when we're talking about teachers, who are, the very foundation of society and who work hard as hell. So the message I'd like to leave is that your fight is just, and it's fair, and is a fight that won't just benefit teachers, it will benefit all society, and in particular the young people that are currently in school being failed by the lack of investment at all levels in what is an essential public good. And the other message is I'd like to leave is that strikes, strikes do bear fruit. So from our experience, just a little bit of background. So our disputes over pensions started in 2018. And because of strike action, we halted changes to our pensions that would have been absolutely catastrophic. There were still cuts, that's why we're still in the fight, but nothing like they were initially planning, which is absolutely horrendous. So those were halted. On pay, we received a 3% pay rise offer when our salaries lost 25% value in just over 10 years. And they were refusing to negotiate altogether, but now they're back on the negotiating table after these 3 days of action we just had. And the threat of a marking boycott in Cardiff University earlier in spring this year has brought our Vice-Chancellor to negotiations with us locally when we hadn't seen him at all for over 3 years. So strikes can work, and we won't back down, and I really hope we can continue the fight together in the new year as well. And just last words, I think all of us here already know that carrying out strike action can be incredibly difficult. It can be physically, emotionally demanding. We have no guarantee of the outcome, and it's easy to feel guilty about the impacts of the strike on those that are most affected. So I just want to bring the reminder that it's the impacts of what's behind the strike that hurts us the most. And as a parent of children in school and as a university teacher who will be teaching some of your pupils in the future, I do appeal to all teachers to join this fight. And I appeal to head teachers and managers and whatnot to stand with their staff and stop trying to protect the public from the impacts of strike, but instead try to protect us from the causes of the strike.
Thank you so
and best of luck.
Thank you so much, Renata. That was great, and great to hear that negotiations are going ahead again, and that, you know, they've been brought back to the table through strike action. That's really encouraging for us to hear that. Thank you, Renata. So our next speaker is Gareth Griffiths, who is a firefighter and is a rep in the Fire Brigades Union. I've heard Gareth speaking on many panels, not least about the climate, as well about the struggles of other supporting the struggles of other trade unionists on picket lines. The FBU are in the middle of their own ballot on pay, and they had a fantastic demonstration in London on December the 6th, which looked amazing. And we're all looking forward to hearing how the ballot is going now, Gareth.
Thanks, Myred, and thanks to the NEU for inviting me to speak here this evening. And yeah, it's quite a privilege again to be able to bring greetings of solidarity from Fire Brigades Union members across Wales here tonight. I also just want to say it was good to see Steve Skelly recently on the RMT picket line as well. It's not very often you'll see a Cardiff City fan in Swansea on a Saturday. So it was really good. But it was really good.
I'm back down there tomorrow, mate. Pray for me.
I will. Yeah, look, I think the RMT have given us confidence. I think they've given so many trade union members confidence over the summer, and I think that in part has led to where we are in the FBU now. We were initially offered 2% back at the end of June, which was overwhelmingly rejected, and then there was a further offer of 5%, which was roundly rejected again by we had a consultative ballot, and that was a 79% reject. So it was overwhelming. And yeah, we had a fantastic rally in Westminster last Tuesday, I think it was, where I think it was over 2,000 firefighters turned up. We'd initially booked a room expecting about 600. That quickly escalated. We had to put more seats in. Then it turns out that the seats weren't even used because people were it was standing room only. And then each speaker had to go outside to address a crowd of about 800 that was outside. So it was absolutely fantastic. And a big thanks also to Beth Winter, who came and met with us. And I think from what I can understand, the security was starting to get a little bit twitchy in House of Commons as well, which was really good. But I think, you know, the firefighter pay has fallen. You know, we've heard about falling pay in real terms. Firefighter pay is down by about £4,000 over the years. We've also had our pensions attacked, and we've seen during a period of austerity, we've seen now nearly 12,000 fewer firefighters across the UK. We've seen tens of fire stations close. We've seen dozens of fire appliances taken out of service. And I think this is now more than about pay. I think we're fighting for the very existence of our individual professions as we know it. I've heard some of the horror stories throughout the teaching profession. It was on I attended the UCU rally in Cardiff Bay fortnight ago, was it? And some of the stories there, they're just, what the teaching profession is going through is just utterly unbelievable. And I heard stories from last week. A friend of mine came off his bike, attended A&E, and he was waiting 6.5 hours for an X-ray. And in the end, a nurse came out, apologized, and said that unless people had breathing difficulties, unless they obviously had a broken limb, could they please consider leaving because they just couldn't cope. We've seen the ambulance service over the weekend on a black alert, I think. You know, and I think it just shows that the ideology that we've seen in recent years is about driving public services into the ground, ready for privatization. What worries me is we've got 2 more years of this lot, and there's only one thing they're interested in, and that's lining their own pockets. It's not about looking after the public, it's about lining their own pockets and looking after each other. And they tell you that there's no money. I've heard it again today, saying that we can't have pay rises for public sector because it's going to cause inflation. Well, all these years we haven't seen public pay rises and public sector pay rises, and yet inflation is now shooting through the roof. And I read something, I think it was yesterday, and I'm sure the maths teachers here will shoot me down when I say this. I can't remember exactly the figures, but I think it was, if every public sector worker was given a 10% pay rise, it would amount something to like 28 billion. And they tell you that that's not there, but it wasn't that long ago. The 43 billion was handed back to the richest people in this country. The truth is that if we were given those 10% pay rises, that would stay in the system, not be shipped offshore. And look, they're going to tell you that you haven't got support. But I know that the support is out there. I've heard people saying that they support striking workers. I'm sure the RMT will have seen it. I saw the CWU rally on Friday in Westminster was absolutely superb. To see so many people there was just, that's so inspiring. So they're going to tell you that there's no support, but that's just not true. They're also going to tell you you can't win. But if you couldn't win, they wouldn't be looking to change the law to stop people taking strike action and making it illegal. So look, you can win, you will win as a movement. We can win and we will win. And I think it's not about somebody, I think it was Renata mentioned about Jeff Bezos. So I'm going to stick with the Jeff Bezos theme, and let's include Branson in that. We're not asking these people to be poor. We're asking the richest in society to pay a little bit more, just to have a little bit less. It's not about making them poor. This is just about helping everybody else and making, I'm not going to call it leveling up, but about making things a lot fairer in society. So look, I'll just finish to say, when you go out on strike, we will stand with you. We'll stand with the NEU. We'll stand with all striking workers. And once again, thanks for the invite. Solidarity.
Thank you so much, Gareth. That was great. And please take our solidarity back to your members as well. And so we're going to move on now. Our next speaker is Nikki Hughes. She is an Associate Director in Employment Relations for RCN, the Royal College of Nursing in Wales, and she's leading on the strike action for Welsh members. As we all know, RCN have the first day of strike action coming up this Thursday. And I know there'll be many NEU members on those picket lines showing solidarity with our nurses. The media coverage has been nothing short of disgusting. And after everything NHS workers went through during the pandemic, it must feel like a huge slap in the face. Welcome, Nikki. Now, she was here earlier on. Perhaps she's dropped out or something. So we'll move on.
She's there, but she's
Nikki's
not
there.
Oh, is
She's
she?
waving.
Yeah.
She's waving, Mairead.
Hang on. I can't. Oh, there we are. I think
Just
she's muted.
sound, maybe.
Nikki?
Can't hear it.
Nikki did
Okay.
just unmute herself, and she's unmuted now, but obviously something's not coming through.
Yeah, thanks, David. Nikki, do you want to go out and come back in again, and we'll move on to Jason in the meantime and go to you after that, because there seems to be something wrong with your sound. Thank you. So we'll listen to Jason in the meantime. Jason Richards is branch secretary of the CWU South East Wales Amal branch, and he's also the secretary of the RCT Trades Council. The CDW have been in a long dispute with their CEO, and it's not just about pay, as are most of our disputes. They're also about terms and conditions. But they held a hugely inspirational rally in London last Friday, as Kerrith spoke about earlier as well, proving that their resolve is still strong. We look forward to hearing more about that, Jason.
Thanks, Mairead. Evening all. Thanks for the invite on. It's a pleasure to be here to give you a bit of an update on the CW dispute, which it has been turned out to be quite a long, bitter dispute. As already been mentioned, we're in a deep cost of living crisis, spiraling inflation. But Royal Mail decided to impose a 2% pay rise on us, and that's really where the dispute started. So it started with pay, and then it evolved into something, well, quite incredible, really. So to put a 2% into context, so Royal Mail at the moment, they're alleging they're losing £1 million a day. That's a turnaround from the start of 2022. They announced record profits of £758 million. Huge profits. They've never announced record profits like that before. And they decided then to give £567 million to the shareholders. And our biggest shareholder is a Czech guy, Daniel Kretinsky, I think his name is. So that money is actually, a big chunk of that money is actually leaving the UK, and it's not getting put back into our economy. It's not actually benefiting anybody. So they've basically squandered the finance of this company, and they should really be sacked for gross mismanagement. Our General Secretary, Dave Ward, he's actually called for a public inquiry into what exactly has happened. So anyways, 2% imposed on us. The CEO, Simon Thompson, has bagged a nice £140,000 short-term bonus for hitting all of his targets, despite, the alleged £1 million a day. And the executives have been stuffing their pockets with free shares, like kids at a sweet shop, basically. It has been unbelievable. So negotiations have been ongoing for months. Obviously, we wanted a better pay deal than 2%, which was quite frankly insulting. We've never had a pay deal imposed on us before. They just said, basically, that's it. That's all you're having. And at the time, they offered a 1.5% extra pay to agree crazy changes to our terms and conditions. So through the negotiation, Royal Mail now have offered us a 7% pay rise, made up of that 2%, which has been imposed on us as well. But again, attached to that is huge, massive reductions in our terms and conditions. And they keep stating that is it. That's the final offer. So I'm going to quickly touch on just some of the changes they want to bring in, just to give a bit of context. So later starts by up to 3 hours. A lot of people took the job in Royal Mail because it's convenient. They don't pick the kids up, etc. When I first started, we used to start at 5 o'clock in the morning. Now we're going to be out delivering till gone 5 o'clock in the evening. Reduction of sick pay and lower triggers, so they're able to manage people out of the business quicker. Use of technology, such as the PDAs, which we carry around with us everywhere. They want to use those now to conduct people if they're not, say, doing a street quick enough. They want to have a high performance culture and be able to use technology in a punitive way. And we have got an aging workforce, but yeah, so that is deeply worrying for the union. Reduce voluntary redundancy terms, which they've actually imposed on us now as well. They want to change the relationship with the CW from a negotiating to a purely consultative relationship, where, again, they just tell us what they're doing. A big red line for us is the new starters, like something which we certainly won't accept is new starters coming in on reduced terms and conditions. I'm sure we'll all agree on here. We got to protect the terms and conditions, not just for us, but for the next generation as well, because, our terms and conditions in Royal Mail have been fought for by the previous generations. So it is so important we continue that, because the day we accept lower terms and conditions for new starters is the beginning of the end, as far as I'm concerned. So with the new starters, currently full-time staff on 37 hours. They want new starters to go on 40 hours with 20% reduced pay, removal of paid meal relief, removal of our Sunday premium payment, which, we're not getting triple time. We get £3 extra an hour for a Sunday premium for work. It is unbelievable. They've even given notice on our commercial agreement, which means out of the 115,000 members we got, I think most of them, the vast majority of them, get their subscription deducted from their pay. So Royal Mail have actually served notice on that. So I think it's in about 10 months' time, we're going to have to re-recruit over 100,000, 110,000 members. You know, this is a pure exercise about destroying the CW so they can usher in the changes that they want without any challenge. So as you can see, this is not just about pay. There's a significant a lot of things attached to this, and worryingly, they started imposing something. So in parcel force, for example, which does come under the Royal Mail umbrella, there's 25% owner drivers in parcel force. They've now started advertising positions within Royal Mail itself, owner drivers. We are being driven down to other gig economy employers like your Hermes, your Yodels, who are driving their own vehicles, not getting paid any sick pay, any holiday pay, etc. No pension because they're all self-employed. And we're getting drove down now to those kind of, that's what they're gauging us against. And they say, well, actually, we're going to pay you 10% more than these other employers. So you should just be grateful. You should just suck it up and accept it. And we can't accept it. You know, I think working class people at the moment are getting really fed up of being told they got to work harder and faster for less. And we just can't just give up and accept it. You know, I think it's clear for everybody to see we've been privatized now for about 13 years, and we are just another failed privatization story. You know, the services have been slashed. The asset stripping has already taken place. Royal Mail have already approached the government about reducing our universal service obligation. So we're not delivering letters 6 days a week. They keep stating that letters are just as important. But we got several members across my own branch suspended for just stating or challenging management about their policy on just delivering parcels. The attacks from Royal Mail during this dispute is quite unbelievable. We got 3 reps suspended at the moment, numerous members on trumped up charges, especially on the picket lines. We're having management actually making stories up about things and events that's happening, and it's getting to the point where, you know, under the anti-trade union legislation, for a picket line supervisor, they gotta wear like a high-vis vest, or they gotta be easily identifiable. And we gotta notify the police. But it's getting to the point the Royal Mail are going after these picket line supervisors so badly. We're trying to think of ways we can avoid it. So, for example, not being easily identifiable and actually taking the chances with the police rather than Royal Mail, because people are getting suspended for just purely being picket line supervisors. Yeah, it is really shocking. And you're in through the back channels, and that Royal Mail are looking to sack reps who have been suspended, even though there's no basis for it. I said I got 3 on the go at the moment, and what I've been told, the comment that somebody's made is, look, they're going to sack them, and they know it's trumped up charges, but they're willing to take the hit at an employment tribunal because they want to send a message that they want to defeat the union. So, look, it's a really, really difficult dispute that we're in. We've also got like 15,000 agency staff working in Royal Mail at the moment, despite the fact that they're saying that there's no money for us. They've employed 15,000 staff, agency staff, and then they're denying our own members all the time, instead giving it to agency workers. We are genuinely in the fight of our lives at the moment. But on a positive note, I think the public support has been unbelievable so far. I do hope that continues. Like I said, I think generally working people have had a gutsful, and I really have had enough. With this cost of living crisis, there's so many working class people in the same boat. They can't afford to pay their bills, and we're just being told they got to accept it. Why should people working and be forced to use food banks with the spiraling energy costs, the fuel costs, and everything else that goes with it? It's not right how a small percentage in this country are able to increase what they have while everybody else has got to suffer.
Thanks, Jason. Can you just round up?
Yeah, okay, no problem. Yeah, so I could talk away for an hour. You know, I've kind of skimmed through a lot of stuff, but so the public support has been brilliant. The amount of solidarity we've had from other trade unions has been phenomenal. We got a reballot next month. So that we're still standing strong. We're still fighting, and we got to fight into the new year because this dispute is not going to be done by Christmas. Solidarity, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jason. That is, Renata said in the chat, it was outrageous to hear about those attacks on trade unionists, and I agree it is. 2% is an absolute insult. It's one of the worst awards that we've heard about, especially when you hear about all the profits that are being made. Solidarity to all your members. Thanks, Jason. And hopefully we are going to be able to get Nikki unmuted now. Let's just have another go. Oh gosh, she disappeared again. She disappeared. Oh, there you are. Thanks,
Can you
Nikki.
hear
Glad
me?
to see you. Thank you.
Oh, but you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Fabulous. That's all right. Problem. New computer, all the settings have changed. So apologies. So thank you so much for inviting me to come and speak tonight. You know, it's really important that we stand together on this and we take the governments on. You know, okay, for us it's Welsh government, but we also, you know, need from a UK perspective to be taking on the Westminster government. And now we need to do this more than ever. So the nurses and healthcare support workers, everybody in the health service had a one-off payment, a consolidated payment earlier in the year, which for some people on lower earnings was a fairly decent percentage. For other people, it came nowhere near inflation, and our ask was 5% plus inflation. That's our members' ask. That's what they wanted. So, you know, we know, and the stories that I'm hearing just reflect everything that's happening in nursing, really. In that, you know, we've had 10 years of pay freezes, pay very small, sort of 0.5% here, 0.5% there. We know the pensions have gone up as well. So we, you know, we're in a position now, it's not about the inflationary rise that Welsh government are trying to say, well, it's only a blip at the minute. This is about at least 10 years of nurses being devalued and not given pay rises. And it's got to the point now where, you know, again, like yourselves, we have registered nurses who've done 3 years of training, who are still registered, they've worked through COVID, actually having to go to food banks to be able to feed their children. And that's just terrible, you know, and also sleeping in their cars because they can't afford the fuel to get back and forth work. We can't have a civilized society that's where that's happening. That's just not acceptable, you know. And we're not asking, you know, we set the 5% plus inflation, but actually what we're asking for is a decent living, that we can pay our household bills. You know, we're not asking to be millionaires or anything. We know that we came into nursing to look after people. And that's another reason why we're doing this, is because, you know, we now have 3,000 nurse vacancies in Wales for registered nurses. This government spent last year 133 million on agency workers, and that's, it seems, going to rise to about 300 million at the end of this year. And what's happening is people are leaving nursing, some are leaving the profession altogether just to go and find somewhere that they can live a decent life. But nurses are leaving to go and work in the agencies, and then they are coming back to work alongside their colleague who possibly they worked with before, having 3 times the amount of money for that shift. We've also seen, I was up in North Wales recently, and I would have suggested that at the end of that night shift, 60% of staff were agency, and the majority of them actually lived in England. And we're coming to a new hospital, to a Welsh hospital, where they didn't have the skills to be able to use the equipment, to provide some of the basic care as a registered nurse. They wouldn't know the patients, they wouldn't know the area, the policies. Now, we've all know a nurse, we've all had our relatives, unfortunately, who've needed to use health services. And the public are telling us they're worried about their loved ones being in the care of the NHS, because then they can see there's not enough staff. They can see that nurses are running around. And this is why, you know, nurses are telling me that they go home scared and upset that they haven't been able to give that care and a patient's come to harm, and that they're then going to get blamed for that, when actually this is a systematic. So we are calling for Welsh Government. We have called for Westminster and Welsh Government to open negotiations, to come to the table with us. They refused. In fact, today, we did meet with the minister for the second time. She called all of the trade unions to a meeting, but offered us nothing on the table to take anything forward. Just says, we haven't got money from Westminster, we can't offer you anything. What do you expect us to do? Well, we expect you to stand up and start supporting nurses, valuing nurses, stop the clapping, and actually do something to value nurses along with the other public sector. And what we can't let Welsh Government do is to tear us apart as a public sector and start pitching us against each other by different tactics and different pay awards. Let's stick together. We are out on Thursday. It's our first day in 106 years. We've never gone on strike. Thursday is our first day in Wales. So we are looking for any support you can give, social media support, pitch up and help us if you can on the to be picket supporters. That would be great. But, you know, just show your solidarity with us and we will do the same with you.
Thank you so much, Nikki. We are, really looking forward to hearing about how Thursday went. I will be on the picket line, the closest picket line to me, and solidarity to all your members. Good luck with your dispute. I'm very pleased that we're now going to be, we've been joined by Beth Winter, MP for Cynon Valley. Beth is a great friend of trade unions. In fact, she used to work for one herself before becoming an MP. And like Shivana, she's been on any picket line she can get to in recent months, supporting workers fighting for their rights. Welcome, Beth.
And thank you all for the very kind invitation this evening. Apologies for my lateness and for missing, I'm sure, what were brilliant speeches, but I had to go and vote, sorry, so I rushed back as soon as I could. So I'll watch them back. I think they've been recorded, so I'll watch all the contributions back. So I am extremely pleased to be here with so many of you who work extremely hard to teach and look after our children, including my own. I've got 3 children myself. And I'm also pleased to be joining such a broad panel of fantastic speakers across different industries and employers who demonstrate how widespread the demand is for a better pay deal. Now, in July, the government offered most teachers, I think, about a 5% pay rise, which in reality is a 7% pay cut due to the soaring levels of inflation. And if we add to this a decline of more than 20% in real terms pay for teachers over the past decade, and educators are leaving the profession in their droves, we are in an extremely, extremely difficult period. In response, Kevin Courtney, the NEU's Joint General Secretary, said, and I'll quote him, "The government has been forced by the NEU members' campaign on teacher pay to drop its previous proposal of a 3% increase for experienced teachers, but it has not moved far enough." He also said a 5% increase would still mean yet another huge cut to the real value of teacher pay against inflation. This isn't a 5% pay rise, it is nearly 7% pay cut. And in that, I think there are 2 key messages for all of us. Firstly, this is a totally unacceptable offer for people suffering a cost of living crisis. And secondly, the campaigning can and will make a difference if we want it to. Now, the NEU's campaigning made it a better offer than previous years, but it is definitely not enough, especially for teachers. Like I said earlier, I've got 3 children in comprehensive education in the Cynon Valley. I've been a school governor myself in the past, and I really do know the extra effort that all the teachers go to over and above what is expected of them, and the same, well, more applied, sorry, during the COVID pandemic, and the same applies to all public sector workers. Extra hours that people give unpaid because you care so much for children and young people, and you want the best service for them, which is why you are being forced, quite frankly, to have made the decision that you have, which is not an easy decision to make. And I previously worked in higher education, and I can remember having to vote for strike action, and I really do understand how difficult it is to make that decision, but it is a necessity. So that's why in your indicative ballot for strike action, the Wales results for teachers saw turnout of, I think, around 70% and a yes vote of 88%. And in Wales, the result for support staff was a similar turnout, well, slightly higher turnout, and yes vote of 83%. Now, these results are overwhelming. They've smashed through the rules the Tories made to defeat strike balloting, and they simply show that people have had enough and they have no alternative but to do this. Just 10 days ago, on the 2nd of December, sorry, that is the bell going again, the leaders of education sector unions representing nearly 750,000 staff set out how they are united on the need to protect your pay against current inflation and to restore its real terms value, and for those pay rises to be fully funded by government. I truly do applaud them for doing so. They are right to do so. And there is no disagreement between the NEU, the NASUT union, or the head teachers union on this. And as you will know better than myself, including from listening to our other speakers this evening, many unions across a wide range of sectors are today having to do the same. The postal workers in the CW union have been striking since the summer with an imposed paltry pay offer of 2%. And I see that Jason Richards, the regional secretary in South Wales, is on the call today. And I have to applaud, he's been doing some fantastic work, and all the posties have been. And I've been with him on the picket line, doing a little bit in compared to what they are having to endure, but they have my full support. Also, the rail workers in RMT, TSSA and ASLEF have been striking since the summer, with no more than a 4% rise this year and 4% next year being offered. And this week, as the previous speaker just said, we are set to see nurses in the RCN and ambulance staff in GMB, Unison and Unite Strike over a 5% pay offer like teachers. And I will be joining the RCN pickets both in London here and back home in Wales next week. Public sector as a whole, as you know, has been attacked by the Tories for 12 years, and they really are testing you and us to the limits. Nurses don't want to impact patients. Teachers do not want to impact children and families. The opposite is true. You want to protect and provide the best service possible to the people that you serve so brilliantly. And the government needs to listen to why you were being forced to do this. Nobody can take a pay cut, a pay freeze year after year. It demoralizes staff, drives people out of work. That's what's happening in hospitals, and it's happening in schools yet, with recruitment and staff retention being a major issues. So we've got to challenge this pay cut and stand together in unity across workplaces for a better pay deal. And it is a political choice. We are the 5th richest nation in the world. We've got billions of pounds being stored away. Unfortunately, the wealth is being retained by the 1%, while the 99% of people are are going without and with insufficient incomes. So it is a political choice and we have to challenge it, and there is a different way. There's one significant point that I do want to make, though, in terms of who we should be targeting. The pay award is formally being made by Welsh Government, but I believe Westminster, who hold the purse string, must fund the pay rises. Wales has experienced funding cuts after funding cut, and the Barnett formula is ill-equipped and it isn't the best formula that could be in existence. And given that the Tories hold the purse strings and they have imposed austerity on every nation of the UK, I have and will continue to shout loudly up here in Parliament for a fairer, and not only a fairer, but a needs-based funding settlement for Wales. And if that was provided, Welsh Government would have the resources, or better resources, to be able to fund the pay rises. I'll just quote Jeremy Miles, but Mark Drakeford himself has commented and been quoted as saying the public sector workers should get at least an inflation-proofed pay rise. And Jeremy Miles has said that it's a disgrace the UK government has left us in such an impossible position. He's right and must be part of the campaign. Wales is one of the poorest areas of the United Kingdom. Welsh Government relies on Westminster for funding and it does not get enough. And all of us as trade unionists can and must coalesce around the demand to UK government for a fair needs-based funding settlement for Wales. And I think we can and we will do that. On teachers' pay, I'll be speaking to the NEU about how I can use the parliamentary processes to speak up and represent the teachers via written questions or in debates, ask questions and press the Minister on NEU Pay and fair funding for Wales. And as activists, I suppose I asked a while, our efforts need to be in mobilising members, which is part of this rally this evening. We also have to make sure, and I know that you're doing this, I know my raid well, we have to be getting out into our communities and mobilising people, build a grassroots campaign involving the third sector, involving local constituents, pupils, teachers, PTFAs, parents, and the whole of the wider community to get on board. We've got to say enough is enough to this UK government. We've got to get the Tories out, and we need and deserve all public sector workers, all workers indeed, deserve inflation-proofed, if not above, pay rises. It's not out of our reach. It is affordable. We can do it. And solidarity with you all. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you so much, Beth. And thank you for making such a huge effort to join us this evening. And I know you've been very busy in Parliament. Thank you for standing with all trade unionists. And yes, it is about funding. And thank you for bringing that up in Parliament again and again on our behalf. We have been here a while, but if anybody has any burning questions, we will have a few minutes to take them if anybody wants to ask any of the speakers anything. Yes, thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you've got another meeting. We will be finishing up fairly soon, but I can't see any hands. I don't know if anybody wants to say anything before we finish. Angela.
Yeah, just to ask, where's everybody going to go to support on Thursday? Because I'm going to turn up at 1 for a few hours, but I missed the beginning of the meeting. So
there is, if you go to Strike Map, they have pickets. They have all the picket lines in England and Wales. You'll be able to find your nearest one there. You can put your postal address, postcode in.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Anybody else want to ask a question or make a comment? If not, I know we're coming up to 7:10, and yeah, we have been here a very long time. I just want to thank all the speakers again. Thank you so much for joining us. It was great to hear the stories of all the trade unions and to know that we are all in the same place. We're all fighting for the same thing, and it gives us a lot of motivation to carry on fighting, to hear everybody speaking about their struggles. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Bye. Thank you.